So I'm going to call an audible on the podcast since we have a special guest today. Michael, me and Bryce have picked the Los Angeles Lakers to win the championship, um, and we had valid reasons to do so. So far, the Lakers are sitting at 10 and 11, and I know LeBron James missed 8 games early, but I need to know what the fuck is going on with the Lakers. So we're going to have a little round table about
Um,
this.
yeah, this is gonna get interesting because I know you're feeling for Russell Westbrook. Now, I saw the post. Everybody wants to blame Russell, right? But you
Right.
look at Anthony Davis's numbers, right? I still blame Russell Westbrook.
Oh my goodness gracious.
And but the reason is the reason is this. I like Russell Westbrook. I think that he's an exciting player. I don't think that he's. This is going to sound weird, but I'll break it down. I don't think he's as good of a team player as what his stats show. That's why, like, I'm not. I think the triple double stat is a great stat. I think it's exciting, but for me, cool stat, buddy. That's really what it is for me because when you're talking about when he gets his assists, when he gets, he'll shoot 50 shots and get 10 assists. And I always bring it back to this point. When we see games like when he had 20, 20, and 20, the Nipsey Hussle game, right? Oklahoma City had nobody really on that team. They had was Paul George on that team? I think Paul George and Carmelo. Well, Paul George and
No, I
Carmelo.
think he was gone. Yeah.
Oh, okay, they were gone. Well, so either way, we saw the impact when he shared the ball like he should. I think that him being a score-first point guard is dangerous for the Lakers, especially because you have two players that have to have the ball in their hand with LeBron and Russell Westbrook. I personally feel that 8-game span that LeBron was out, I think that he could have came back within a few games earlier than what the 8 games was, but they need to find their chemistry with Russell on the court. I've had this conversation with a buddy of mine, and there's just something you can't do. You can't not start Russell Westbrook, right? But I personally feel that the team that he needs to be a part of includes like a Carmelo Anthony and Dwight Howard on the court. Come out on the second team because LeBron needs to have somebody like Rondo on the court. When you have Russell Westbrook and LeBron on the court, that's when shit gets wild. And it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do here? Because this looks like a clusterfuck, if you pardon my French. But
oh, no, we cuss here.
It looks bad. Like, it's just like, this is not what I wanted. And it's turning out to be something that I'm not liking. I'm scared for the Lakers. I have the Lakers winning the whole thing as well, but I'm not as confident as I was until I see that flip in Russell Westbrook. Because he needs to know when to take bad shots, which in this case, bro, you're a 31% three-point shooter. You need to start making these when you're wide open. They leave him wide open when he's going to shoot. Why? Because he's more than likely going to miss. Like that's when we're talking about fear, he's not feared as a shooter at all. Right. And when you're spreading the court the way that LeBron controls the court, you have to make those shots. Game 1, Reggie Miller made this point. He said, Russ, you're going to have to make those shots. In OKC, you probably could have got away with it because you're going to end up getting 50 of them in a game anyway. Now, the thing is that why I say the triple-double stat is a cool stat only because you don't get wins. And it's almost like the points are more, like the stat padding is more important than the W. You had players like Victor Oladipo on your team that you didn't even really utilize at all. And next year, he leaves OKC. The next year, he's an MVP candidate. You also had a time where you had Carmelo and Paul George on your team, right? You had Steven Adams on your team. You had people around you, and you didn't do anything. Are you exciting as a player? Absolutely. But are you that player that's going to get us over the hump and get us to a championship? Nope, not at all. And that's why I think like he needs to understand his role on the court with the Lakers, it's not what was over in OKC. It's not what was over in Washington. And by the way, look at how well Washington is playing right now without Russell Westbrook.
Well, yeah.
Like, I think that there's a trend setting here at this point, and I don't know if it's me just feeling like, okay, the Russell Westbrook that I've been talking about is being shown now. You're hurting teams with this. Be your point guard. Know your role.
Oh shit. Bryce, you ready to jump in on that?
Yeah. Um, I I actually have a similar take. But I'll go ahead and start with what I've been saying all year. Uh, I think Anthony Davis is the one that has to have the MVP type of season. Um, Adding the Russell Westbrook to the team is a tough fit, obviously. My thing is, at this point, I see Westbrook's career and like what he's been asked to do, or at least in his eyes, probably what he thinks he's had to do. And to me, the move to the Lakers was going to be LeBron sitting down with him and being like, "Look, we know you have this athletic, you have this drive, all those things we need. My minute needs to change, and I need to be saved for the playoffs. So all the weight needs to go on you Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis. But the problem is he has to relent to Davis in my eyes. That if they run up the court, Westbrook shouldn't be running an offense for too long without Davis getting the ball. That, in my opinion, Davis is the guy. And if that comes down to LeBron sitting down with both of them and being like, I'm going to take a step back, like we talked about needing to do, and facilitating and keeping Westbrook in check. Because I don't think Westbrook's ever played with a team with talent to where another player or another coach in charge is going to say, hey, you have to take a step back because you don't have to be this guy who does everything for us because it's actually hindering us. You need to just be the point guard. You have enough talent. You don't have to do everything. I think some of that is what Westbrook's mindset is. Like outside of the earlier team, Durant, Harden, where they were just young and learning, I think Westbrook's always kind of felt like he has to do these things. And because of his confidence mentality, we don't know how many times he's really been checked by someone that he might think should check him. Even if you don't like LeBron James, I think a lot of players, especially if you play with him, are going to respect his opinion and his take on the team, especially when he's playing GM and you're there because he brought you there. So I just feel like there's a conversation that needs to be had, and I think the more we get of LeBron on the court with them as the season goes on, in my eyes, for this to work as well as it could, we're going to see Westbrook for the first time really slowly take a step back in what he feels like he has to do. So maybe the turnover, tick down a little. Maybe his actual time on the ball in his hands ticks down a little bit. Because otherwise it's going to be the same old song and dance with Westbrook, and that's not going to, in my eyes, lead to a championship with the Lakers. And if it does, it's going to be a mess. I can't get away from Anthony Davis in the ball and kind of put in the kind of performance he did the other night, where he's making blocks on the three and following up on the same drive. Like, we need that all the time from Davis, and we don't get that. But the Westbrook aspect is just a wild card that isn't always great. And I think teams can win with Westbrook, but I think someone's going to really have to reel him in for the first time ever. And I think the only guy who can do that is LeBron. Kevin Durant doesn't have that kind of attitude. He was never able to do that. He's like, well, I'm out of here. I'm not going to try to make this work. Westbrook needs, as they say, like a firm hand. And I think he can do what people want him to do. But until he's really told and placed, which he may not accept, we don't know. I think that's the only way the Lakers look like as good as they could be paper. But otherwise, I think they're going to still the pack team kind of and make a splash in the playoffs if LeBron, if everybody stays healthy. They're still going to be good, but not nearly as good as they could be. And championship might be out of the question if they can't make it work with Westbrook. But I think he's had to have this take a step back.
Okay. Let me unpack this because both of you guys dropped some good points.
Well,
Neither
there's
one.
one other point I wanted to make that may change a little bit of the landscape of what I said as well.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, CL. But I think that what I didn't mention was the biggest problem with the Lakers, and it's not Russell Westbrook. I think the chemistry portion needs to be adjusted. Like the chemistry topic is where Russell Westbrook comes into play. But I think the bigger problem is Frank Vogel. I think his coaching style and his rotations are horrible. And I think that's affecting things as well. So I didn't want to leave that point out and put all the blame on Russell Westbrook. I think the bigger problem is Frank Vogel, but the chemistry, I think, situation does rely more on the Russell Westbrook side. So
I think Vogel, if they play at the current pattern that they're on right now, Vogel's going to be out of there by the All-Star break. So is Russell to blame? Is LeBron to blame? Is Anthony Davis to blame? Defensively, and to use a word Michael used, they're a clusterfuck. And I'm going to use their last game as an example. Bryce and Michael, if I was to tell you that LeBron James dropped 30, 11 assists, 7 rebounds, Anthony Davis dropped 23, 4 blocks, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and Russell Westbrook dropped 29 points, 11 assists, and 10 rebounds, would you believe that the Lakers lost that game?
I wouldn't.
What about you, Bryce?
I wouldn't believe it. If I didn't watch the game, I didn't know it, I just saw the stat line, the Lakers had to have won that.
What about you, Bryce?
Yeah, same. I mean, my guess would be that they lost.
So far this season, between the three of them, it's the best box score that the three of them have ever dropped, and they still lost the game because they're a clusterfuck on the defensive end. Frank Vogel is supposed to be a defensive coach. We're not seeing that effort on the court right now. Anthony Davis has the potential to be the most dynamic defensive player in the NBA. And since he's been in LA, his defense has consistently gotten worse year after year after year. We don't expect LeBron at 37 years old to be a great defender night after night. Russ can play defense. We know this. Dwight Howard can play defense. DeAndre Jordan can be a body in the way. So we're not seeing any effort defensively, which I think is the biggest problem with the Lakers. As far as turnovers. Westbrook's not even leading the league in turnovers right now. It's James Harden. But if I look at this last game, I see LeBron James had 7 turnovers and Westbrook only had 3. So I don't want to hear about turnovers. Ball handlers turn over the ball, period. LeBron's turnovers is high. Harden's turnovers is high. Westbrook's turnovers is going to be high. 3-point percentage in this last game. Anthony Davis. Excuse me. 0 for 5, I believe. Russell Westbrook, 2 for 4. LeBron James, 2 for 13. Why is LeBron James shooting 13 threes? That's where the coach has to come in and be like, look, bro, this ain't it. So there's fundamental problems with the Lakers. Defensively, knowing who needs to shoot threes and who doesn't need to shoot threes. And as Michael said, rotations. I still believe this team is going to figure it out. Anthony Davis needs to be the first option. Russell Westbrook needs to be the second option. LeBron James needs to be the third option. Until LeBron decides to do that, it's not going to happen. Mike, I threw it to you.
I think that's a great point. But I also say that's only one game. Because we joke about. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there was a Twitter post that was made, and it was you had posted it, and Cortez responded to it. Shout out to Cortez as well. But he said, okay, it was talking about triple doubles, and he was like, okay, now which number was the turnovers?
Yeah, I remember that.
For Russell, so for the commonality is Russell Westbrook. The running joke that people have is that he averages a quadruple double because turnovers. So when we're talking about, okay, he only had 3 and LeBron had 7. Okay, we're talking about a sample size of a minuscule sample size of one game compared to what the consensus can actually see. And I think that, yes, I think that you're 100% right. When they can understand who's first, second, and third option is going to be a very important piece to where they can understand those roles that I was talking about on the first portion of this. Yeah, Frank, you need to do something, my man. You need to start to step it up. But we do know that LeBron is the GM as well, right? So when he's on the court, it's almost like, well, how much does Frank Vogel really mean when LeBron's on the court? So they get Russell Westbrook going. He had a really, really good game individually. A game that, yes, you would normally say, holy shit, they should have won that just off of that effort. He didn't have a bad shooting night. He didn't have a lot of turnovers. He shot well from the 3. He did what he needed to do. But the problem is, in that game was LeBron. And that's going to happen until they get this chemistry thing going. But get Russell going. Now work on Anthony Davis. Then let LeBron come in. And because we know LeBron can carry a team on his shoulders the whole season. So you worry. I think he's kind of worried about getting everybody on their page. And then he's going to get onto his. So it's going to be a season-long thing. It's going to be a roller coaster. We're probably not going to see the Lakers that we really expected until probably late February, early March.
Got it.